Veterans are a burden on the system. At least that's the message that I'm getting from Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Secretary of the VA, Doug Collins. See, they're planning 83,000 cuts to VA employees to save money. This country spent upwards of $6 trillion sending us to fight wars for them. $6 trillion over the course of 20 years, and we always had it. It was never a question of where that money was going to come from. It was always there. But when those millions of veterans stopped being useful to the federal government, when we stopped contributing to the federal government, we became a burden. You see, while we were on active duty or reserves, we were contributing to the system. We were a part of the machine. We had a role to play. But for a lot of us veterans, when we got out, we didn't. And so now the American taxpayer is just paying for us to exist. And because Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Doug Collins don't feel like we contribute enough anymore, we are now a burden on the system. "22 veterans every single day take their own lives, according to the VA. If we continue to not support veterans of all walks of life, that number is going to go up exponentially.
We are not going back, and we're not going to just sit by and let two billionaires tell us how our tax dollars are going to get used when it comes to our veterans. We made a promise when people join the military, and we better hold up that promise. I don't care who's in the office in the White House. There's no way that a billionaire is going to tell us how to staff the VA system.
That's right.
If anything, we should be talking about how we're going to fund the VA system even further. We just passed the PACT Act, which means that more veterans have access to care because they were exposed during their service, just like me. I was 18 years old when I entered the military. I'm 50 years old now. I got 2 children. You mean to tell me that because I serve my country, that I'm not going to be able to live or not be able to access the VA system? That's bull. And I am sorry for the language, but I'm pissed off, y'all. And I know millions of veterans across the country are just as angry as I am, and so are their family members. So we're here standing with our union brothers and sisters and veterans. Many of those union brothers and sisters are also veterans. We got a lot of work to do, y'all. But I'm telling you now, the members of Common Defense, the members of all these unions that are standing behind me are not going to let this go by.
Shalom. I would like to give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. I would like to give double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Salutations to all you sister Akim, pushing his word across the 4 corners of the world. Just another news update through the spirit, the power, and the vibration of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. And this is an article from the NewYorkTimes.com, and the title says, VA Secretary says slashing 80,000 jobs is a goal, not a firm plan. And right here, as you can see, this is Doug Collins, and he's the Secretary of the Veterans Affairs. And this article came out on May the 6th, 2025. And it says, Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins pushed back on reports that his department would slash over 80,000 jobs, arguing that figures cited in internal department memos were merely goals, and accusing Democrats of fear-mongering by saying the cuts will harm veterans' care. Our goal is a 15% decrease. Could be more, could be less, Mr. Collins told the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee in his first Capitol Hill testimony since being confirmed to President Trump's cabinet. He added that no one has discussed firing doctors and firing nurses. Mr. Collins said that Democrats' warning that the cuts could weaken veterans' health care were trying to scare my veterans and scare my employees. In heated exchanges with Democrats, Mr. Collins refused to say which jobs might be cut, arguing that it would be malpractice to publicize decisions not yet finalized. Democratic and independent lawmakers took umbrage at his caginess, accusing him of trying to cover up the impact of the cuts. The fact that you won't tell us what the contracts are that are being renegotiated makes me think there are things in those contracts that maybe you don't want us to know about. said Senator Angus King, independent of Maine, adding that the goal should be efficiency, not a quota. Senator Maggie Hassan, Democrat of New Hampshire, told Mr. Collins that most people, when they state a goal, decide they'll like to reach it before adding. They cannot set out a goal and then get angry at us for asking what the impacts of that goal or those cuts would be. Democrats were not alone in voicing concerns. While most of the panel's Republicans offered support for Mr. Collins, Senator Jerry Moran, the panel's chairman, warned him that cuts should not be the goal. Mr. Collins acknowledged that errors had been made and said that staffers rehired to certain positions had since been exempted from cuts, but he denied that any of the cuts had undermined the department's work. Under questioning from Mr. Moran, Mr. Collins highlighted the example of the Veterans Crisis Line, arguing that he had always protected all those who actually answered the phone. He said that he personally decided to rehire all laid-off staff because we didn't want anybody to falsely accuse that we were not answering the line. He also said that the Trump administration planned to invest more in healthcare services, mentioning the $5 billion in extra VA funding that the Trump administration requested from Congress last week for the 2026 fiscal year. And honestly, me speaking as a man, I'm not buying it, because at the end of the day, this is an Edomite. And according to the Holy Scriptures, it reassures us through the spirit of Esau's characteristics and just who they truly are as a people. And according to the book of Psalm 55 and 21, it stated how the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. Because what we just read, this Edomite right here, Doug Collins, he's speaking as a lamb. So going back to the book of Psalm 55 and 21, how the words of his mouth are smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. So these so-called Caucasians who stem from the biblical line of Esau Edom cannot be trusted, especially within these critical times that we are currently in. And as you saw from the opening of this video, of those two military veterans sharing the same sentiment and pretty much the same talking points that they have toward this American government, of them not caring for their veterans, making these unrighteous decrees and policies. So therefore, a lot of these military veterans are being very vocal and they're enraged, and they have a very right to be. Like, as a very young age, you're 18, 19, or 20, and you're invested your blood, your sweat, your tears, your livelihoods, and even in certain cases, your limbs, your mental health, and also your lives into this American oppressive system that has been terrorizing these other foreign countries or nations for many years. And just for you to find out these so-called wars were all staged, monetarily funded by the international bankers, and it was all for capitalism and greed. So as a military veteran, you survived these wars that you went on tour to just to come back to this American system that does not care about you, nor defending your veteran cares benefits. And these so-called powers that be, these international bankers, they look at you military men or women as pawns, like you're just a chess piece of the smallest size and value, only to fit their financial, political, and military interests. Which is why Henry Kissinger made that statement, military men are dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns for foreign policy. In a great movie, more so a classic, that gives you a little bit more insight how America's military wars are really just some BS at the end of the day, and it's all for financial gain. It's the movie First Blood that came out in 1982, starring Sylvester Stallone. And his name within that movie was John Rambo. And John Rambo was a military veteran that fought within the Vietnam War. So he came back to America pretty much broke, hopeless, jobless. So he went on a rant how he operated on $1 million machinery over there at the Vietnam War. He did all this and all that for this American government, but just to return back home from the war, all broke. And he was like a time-ticking bomb that went on a rampage, and rightfully so. And that really shouldn't be the notion of a military veteran that invested their blood, their sweat, their tears, their livelihoods into a system only for them to turn their backs on them. That's cold-blooded. And let's get right quick. Ecclesiasticus 26, verse 28 within the GNT. And that's a Good News translation. And it says, there are two things that made me sad, and a third that makes me angry, a soldier who has become poor, intelligent people who are not respected, and a righteous person who turns to evil. So the point right here, a sad observation of a soldier who has become poor. Like you read into the history of our forefathers, like King Saul, King David, when they came back victorious from those wars, they were well off. They had a lot of substance. But fast forward to nowadays, within this American oppressive system, it's a troubling issue with military veterans being homeless within America. And that's a damn shame. And in regards to America, like for you to have your own military veterans to come out to the forefront and be very vocal about your hypocrisy, your lies, your disappointments, and etc., says a lot about the moral value of America, which is putting more shame and disgrace upon your so-called glory, which is an end-time biblical prophecy that's coming out more to the forefront within these latter times. And that takes me right to Habakkuk 2, verse 16. Thou art filled with shame for glory. So that shame goes into your disgrace. Like a lot of these Americans, including these military veterans, are losing their honor and respect for the so-called American flag and for what America stands for. And I did a recent video of an Edomite guy. He was just saying he's very shameful and humiliated by being called an American. So again, that aligns up with end-time biblical prophecies. It says again, thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also and let thy foreskin be uncovered, because everything is coming out to the spotlight of America's wicked deeds and schemes. As is stated within Luke 8 and 17, for there is nothing hidden that will not be made manifest, nor anything secret that will not be known and come abroad. So within these end times, everything is coming out to the light of America's dark secrets, mysteries, agendas, and just total blatant lies. So again, thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. And that's a very damn shame for your own military veterans that literally put their lives on the front lines and to only be mistreated like this. Like, check out these major cities within America. You're going to see a growing plague of homelessness. And the majority of those people are military veterans, the ones who dedicated and devoted their lives for this so-called American standard. And that stance alone, these American military veterans coming out to the forefront on social media and being very vocal at these political rallies and bringing more light to the American public of America's unrighteous, draconian decrees, policies, and their lack of care that they have towards these military veterans is only gravitating more momentum. So therefore, that spirit alone is arousing interest, motivation, and it's also inciting more American people to resist or rebel against this oppressive American government, especially these political public figures that are announcing these unrighteous decrees. Which takes me right to Isaiah 19 verse 1 within the NLT, and that's the New Living Translation. And as you can see from the heading, a message about Egypt. And Egypt is a spiritual codified name for America. And it says, this message came to me concerning Egypt, again, America. Look, the Lord Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai is advancing against Egypt. So if you're against something, that means you're in opposition to. So if you're against something or somebody, that means that you're in opposition to. You have some type of hostility towards, which is the same sentiment that Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai have towards America, this great sinful kingdom. And everything that we see that's brewing within America is all for the controversy of Zion. And I brought out an article within my recent video, how 7 out of 10 Americans are bracing for job layoffs. And this growing epidemic is becoming so notable that it's called job layoff anxiety, which explains how Yahweh Bahashim Al-Shah is causing the burden of Egypt, because that word burden goes into like pressure, tension, strain, anxiety, depression, perplexity. Like more and more of Americans are concerned about their personal finances, job security, healthcare costs, political interests or concerns, and really just the overall current state of this American economy, because it's not aligning up with their so-called American dream. So therefore, the hearts of the Egyptians melt with fear. And here's the point that I stated, like that stance of these American military veterans are coming out to the forefront and being very vocal at these political rallies and tapping more into that spirit of rebellion against this American power structure. And it says right here in verse 2, I will make Egyptian fight against Egyptian. And again, that's referring to American against American. Brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, city against city, province against province. And within today's terms, that would be called civil war, which is a war between citizens of the same country. And let's get right quick to prophecy within Mark, the 3rd chapter and the 23rd verse within the NLT. Yahushua called them over and responded with an illustration. How can Satan cast out Satan? He asks. A kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. And everything within the city of confusion, aka America, is definitely collapsing. And more so, it's a controlled demolition or a collapse by the so-called powers that be. Because what they want at the end of the day, a global digital paradigm. So a kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. Similarly, a family splintered by feuding will fall apart. Hence, the different classes of families within America. You have the red states against the blue states, either conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican. It all meets the line of division, separation. So therefore, this is the divided states of America. Verse 26, and if Satan is divided and fights against himself, how can he stand? He will never survive. And that's the overall notion for America. It will never survive because you're seeing nothing but splits, division, separations, which is all main key ingredients for a future collapsed society or kingdom. All right, so back in Isaiah 19, verse 2, I will make Egyptian fight against Egyptian, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, city against city, province against province. So again, that word against goes into like being in opposition to or having hostility towards, which is an everyday growing sentiment within America. Verse 3, the Egyptians will lose heart and I will confuse their plans, which links up with Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter and the 3rd verse. How the grinders cease because they are few, which is referring to the workforce within America, hence the job layoffs, unemployment, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. So therefore, the future for America in trying to obtain the so-called American dream is being dimmed on a daily basis. A lot of people are really losing hope, being within that spirit of despair, and just straight totally bugged out, lost in the sauce. So again, the Egyptians will lose heart and I will confuse their plans. They will plead with their idols for wisdom and call them spirits, mediums, and those who consult the spirits of the dead. And I will hand Egypt over to a hard, cruel master. A fierce king will rule them, said the Lord Yahweh of heaven's armies. And that cruel Lord or master has to be Donald J. Trump. Like, look at these draconian executive orders that he has passed within office, and it only has been 100 days and some change. And these unethical and unrighteous decrees and laws or policies that this cruel Lord is coming in it's only inciting more hatred and violence and rebellion within these Americans and to come against this American government. Which takes me right to 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter and the 14th verse. And this is within the GNT. The world and the people in it are doomed. So America has an inevitable divine appointment unto judgment by Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai. Like it's no way that you can heal America or resuscitate it for it can return back into that golden age of America. Those so-called glory days are over because time and chance happen unto them all. Because eventually every empire falls. So how much more of America? So the world and the people in it are doomed. The war that will bring their destruction is very near, which is going to be the Battle of Armageddon, aka World War III. When our Lord and Savior, Yahushua, returns along with his heavenly host of angels, that's going to be the final battle. And it says, nations will arm themselves and fight against other nations. So within America, very soon, it's going to be class wars and also race wars. And here's the point, verse 16. There will be great political turmoil with one group trying to overpower another and gain control. And concerning Trump with these trade wars, hence this new tariffs plans, even on social media within the comment boards, you will see, well, you all voted for this. And in actuality, it really doesn't matter who you vote for because none of your votes really do matter or count because presidents are selected, not elected. But the point that I'm making, that's inciting feud between the so-called Democrats and Republicans, which is a house being divided. So again, there will be great political turmoil with one group trying to overpower another and gain control while ignoring the legitimate government. And that's because it's going to be heavy civil wars within America, and they are not going to regard their political figures. From your governors, your senators, your mayors, from the city council to the lawmakers, and even police. And as the same text is stated within the KJV version, how they should not regard their kings nor princes. And that's because a lot of people are coming to the awakening of the 1% and how they're trying to obtain this NWO or this great reset. So, of course, you know that the public cannot get their hands on this hidden or shadow government. So, therefore, who will be next in line? These different political figures. And that pretty much concludes the lesson through the Spirit. As you can see from the title of this article from the New York Times, VA Secretary says slashing 80,000 jobs is a goal, not a firm plan. And you already know by default, Esau, Edom cannot be trusted. That's why I said it within Ecclesiasticus 12 and 10, to never trust thy enemy. And that's a commandment for us now in the knowing. And also 1 Thessalonians 5 and 3, for when they shall say peace and safety, there's sudden destruction coming upon them. So we will see how this will all pan out. And that's because we're supposed to measure our times diligently within itself. So with that, hopefully you all is edified, you all stay strong, keep pushing forward. Shalom.